The MoneroTopia Price Report segment is sponsored by Exolix, a privacy-focused, non-custodial instant crypto exchange. Go to exolix.com to enjoy secure and completely anonymous swaps with no KYC or sign-up. Swap between Monero and 2,000 plus assets at the most competitive rates and with no limits. Exolix.com, your fast and secure way to privacy.
All right. Not actually, to be honest, not too much exciting happened with the price this week. Everything is basically flat unless you're a stock bro, in which case you've made new all-time highs, but that's a pretty regular thing. You could basically always be saying that you're making new all-time highs. So we're looking here, obviously, at the Monero US dollar price. And like I said, things have just been flat. You know, we had big volatility to the downside, and now it looks like there's kind of this consolidation happening. Okay, you know, I don't think anyone really quite knows where things are going. I will say anecdotally, a friend of mine hit me up last night and they said, hey, can you help me out? Kraken I'm having problems with Kraken. And I was like, really? So I don't know what's going on there. I didn't investigate that further. That was last night. I told them to use Trocador as an aggregator. And they were like, well, like 10 minutes later, they're like, hey, that totally worked. Yeah, it sounded like they were trying to get into Monero. Maybe they're trying to get out of Monero. I don't know. Actually, I didn't ask them, to be honest. Anyway, so that's just a small data point. Here's the trick for you guys. Anecdotal evidence is like people try to say it's a fallacy. And I've said this a lot, but I haven't said it in a long time. Anecdotal evidence is extremely useful if you understand the kind of statistical power that it has. The fact is that most of us, the things that you see from, especially around like more slightly normie friends and acquaintances, the mentalities that you see happening there are very likely to be representative of the population. Yeah, you don't have this like massive, high level confidence interval or whatever, right? A narrow confidence interval. But it still has statistical power. So when you see, like, for example, a friend of mine back in the last bull market was first getting into crypto, and he was like, yeah, man, I got into crypto. I bought Doge. And I should have taken that. A smarter version of me back then would have taken that data point and said, Doge is the first one you bought. That
Top
means
signal.
something. Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't a top signal. He was getting into crypto, and the first one he bought was Doge, and then Doge pumped fucking massively, right? It was one of the best performing coins of 2021.
That was before the Elon pump, was it?
Yeah. And so it's like, if I had just gone, because we were entering the bull market. So if I had been slightly smarter back then, I would have said, well, that's a data point. That's an interesting indicator that the normies are getting into Dogecoin, right? And you can apply that to other things as well. You can apply that to trading. So anyways, I just wanted to share that. Like, pay attention to your somewhat normie-ish friends, and then that will give you, in a lot of cases, a reasonably good finger to the wind of what the what the situation looks like. Okay, but back to Monero. So actually what you can see here is that there's a consolidation happening exactly in a range that would make sense from a wave magic perspective, right? We've got this sort of constrained band here, and the lower standard deviation bands, the orange bands. And at some point, price is very likely going to want to break out of this range, right? This is, again, we talk about this all the time. It's typical price action. Big volatility to one direction, consolidation, right? Narrowing volatility is kind of almost like a compressed spring, and then price is going to want to find some other new set point. So we don't know. I mean, this thing could maybe stay here for some period of time, or it could just decide to break out next week. But look for Monero to we're entering that zone where you would say, hey, maybe this thing is about ready to make another move to a particular direction. And I have to believe that Monero is going to have the tendency to move where the rest of the market moves. And I do think we're still in a bull market. So, and again, like, here we are, Bitcoin versus Monero. Has anything interesting happened for this past week? Nope. Like, almost nothing at all. Your big opportunity moment, like we talked about, was this guy right down there. Because again, just these standard deviation bands, for a number of reasons, could be psychological. And just because they're kind of like defining, hey, what has the price done, right? And they're cool because what they do is, when you make some big violent movement, you're saying, hey, in the most extreme of circumstances, here's how far price moved, and then let's draw some statistical boundaries on, from there we can draw statistical boundaries to say, well, what would be other reasonable moves, considering that this would be the most violent move that we could have under the current scenario, right? That's not to say that some other fundamental event couldn't cause some other violent move, But in general, it just gives you a frame of reference, and it just seems to work really well. I mean, again, I was really surprised when I made this, and it just popped out, and it seemed to be very useful. All right, so we've got the divergences. Actually, nothing interesting has happened this week. Everything seems to be like relatively pinned to Kraken. But then again, if Kraken is having problems, then this chart would actually make sense to look normal. So, because again, these price divergences aren't the fair, versus the fair market price of Monero. They're just relative to Kraken. And we chose Kraken back in the day because they never shut down withdrawals. But that has kind of changed as of the past few weeks. Kraken seemed to make some bullshit excuses for why you were not allowed to deposit Monero, and then I think they shut down withdrawals as well. I never really followed up into that. I don't know if someone else has more information. I should probably hit up Monero Fox and ask him, because he seems to still keep up with a lot of that. Okay, here's Bitcoin versus the United States dollar, the amazing best currency fiat in the world. It actually is probably one of the best fiats in the world. Everyone wants it. Okay, so yeah, nothing happened. We basically, so here was the wait here. Well, actually, let's go to the 4 hour. That's right. I was looking at the daily. Yeah. So let's first stop and just talk at the daily. So, nothing like really super special has happened here when let me see. Actually, there's YouTube comments. Hang on. Mr. Anderson said Kraken used excuses as network instability because ongoing attack. Yeah, that was a bullshit excuse because maximum 9 block reorgs are happening. And so Kraken could have just said, hey, we're going to be extra cautious and set 100 blocks right before we accept your deposit. And if it's above this threshold, then we're going to require, I don't know, 1,000 blocks or something like that, right? Maybe not that. Maybe 1,000 is ridiculous, but maybe it's not that ridiculous. Like a day and a half, right? Anyways, yeah, Kraken really was making fucking excuses that were bullshit. Like the network instability excuse was not a real excuse. So all of us are now asking, is Kraken not what they used to?
They're crapping out excuses right now.
They really are. Like I haven't kept up with it, but we saw.
I just initiated a small withdrawal, and I'm going to see how long it's going to take. But they said it's like, oh, we're experiencing delays right now, and they're being, it's like vague. Like, so I'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Historically, they've been incredibly quick, no matter what situation Monero has been in. Whereas all the other, exchanges will very quickly at a whim shut down withdraws. But I'll see what happens this time around because it's weird. Are other exchanges doing the same thing at this very moment still, or is it just Kraken now?
That's a good question. I'm not too sure. I mean, I've made some transfers here and there with some of the instant swap exchanges, and I haven't had any problems with them. So, yeah, I mean, Kraken has been shady as fuck the past 3 weeks. Like, there's just no reason for them to do some of that. And it just seemed like they
dropped Canada recently.
Yeah, and then they dropped Canada. Yeah. So it's like there's this string of like little heuristics, and it's like, yeah, but y'all never done that before, and you don't need to do it now, and your excuses are kind of bullshit. So I don't think we should, honestly, guys, I don't think we should trust Kraken anymore. That doesn't mean I'm saying that they're distrustful. I'm just saying that the trust that they enjoyed, in my mind, is mostly gone now. We have to ask we have to put them back into a neutral category and say, hey, are these guys potentially, have they gone the way of the dark side, right? Now they got the new CEO, etc. So just, yeah, anyways, that's with relation to the divergences chart here. These are all, we're dividing all of these by Kraken, but that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Come from behind sent 3 cents. He will not divide his apes together strong.
Yes, we can. All right, let's go back to Bitcoin here. Yeah, so we're looking at the daily on Bitcoin. This is still positive, right? This is an unequivocally positive chart. You really want to see this thing be more positive, right? Like we're hoping it's currently September, right? So we've got October, November, December. There's 3 more months left before we have like the classic 4-year cycle. Maybe you want to expand that window, give it another 2 months just because, I don't know, because reasons, right? Maybe it could be longer this time. So we have 3 to 5 months before the bull market is, over, right? But on the 4-year cycle. And where are we at? 108,000. But the regression analysis, and let's just go ahead and pull this up really quick. The regression analysis has us at 200,000 by the end of the year. It should have us at 200,000 by the end of the year. Sorry, this chart is moving slowly. Let me do a little bit of, there we go. So that's the red line, right? So let's just go here. Right now, the upper boundary of statistical regression would put us at 195,000, and then you can see by the end of the year that rises to a little bit over 200,000. So it's like, I mean, price can pump out, any moment, right? It can happen. I'm just saying that you really kind of want to be a little bit higher than where we are right now. But I don't know. Let's go backwards if we can to the last bull market. Yeah, I mean, the last bull market was just extremely violent, right? I mean, and the one before it obviously was even more violent. So this thing, it almost got there, then kind of like sort of meandered its way towards the top, like it reached for that top level. So I don't know, guys. Maybe it's not as bad as I'm kind of making it out to be. I would just kind of hope this thing would be a little bit higher by now, in terms of like where it quote unquote should be if we're going to make this top line, right? These are just boundaries. There's no reason that we have to make, we don't have to make that top level boundary right there. There's no reason that has to happen. But anyways, okay, so we're going to go to the 4-hour here. We're going to forget about the regression analysis for a minute. We're just going to look at the near-term price action. And near-term, again, things aren't as nice as we would hope them to be, especially given that the stock market is doing quite well. But things are still generally bullish, right? There's still, like, this chart still has plenty of potential to go to the upside. At the moment, I can't tell you that I think it's going to the upside soon, right? As far as I'm concerned, this chart could just as easily test these lower standard deviation boundaries. You really don't want to do that in a bull market. You want to test lower boundaries occasionally as a nice floor, as a nice support, and then you want to just steadily move up. And right now, again, this isn't the strongest price action that we could see. Price action that would have been stronger would have seen something, like that, right? We would be doing this right there. So especially, let's go to the stock market. That is especially true in light of the fact that stock markets are continuing to make new all-time highs. Let's go to the S&P. S&P 500 made a new all-time high on Friday. Yeah, it pulled back a little bit into the close, but markets, right? Risk markets continue to march higher. NASDAQ didn't make a new all-time high, but it almost did, right? So this is still a bullish chart, and this still looks good. In fact, I wanted to look at the stocks versus crypto. I want to look at stocks versus crypto today because I want to show you guys something that it's not super flattering, right? This is stocks versus Bitcoin. So maybe we should look at stocks versus crypto, but this is not very flattering. So here's the 2017 high. Now in 2021, we did make a 55% higher high. But now, like, where are we? Bitcoin has not made a higher high. Oh, sorry. It has made a higher high relative to the NASDAQ, but only by 11%, right? Other than that, like, at the moment, it's actually flat relative to the NASDAQ, in terms of what it did in the last bull market. So it's kind of like, here's your diminishing returns, right? If you were lucky enough to get in pre-2017, right, 2016 or before, and you didn't sell like a retard, and you rode this shit up to here, you could have just dumped that into the NASDAQ and had higher risk-adjusted returns, right? Because there's so much volatility with Bitcoin. You would have lost less money on the bull markets, and okay, you wouldn't have gotten that extra 50% on top. But it's like, let me show you. This chart looks like, I'll tell you what, guys, this chart looks like shitcoin. This is how shitcoins, when they launch, this is how they look versus Bitcoin. They get massive pump early on, and then they get this kind of diminishing rollover. Bitcoin relative to the stock market, in my mind, yeah, it's probably has more room to move towards the upside a little bit. You're just not, it's going to be harder and harder for people to say, oh, get into Bitcoin instead of stocks. Because stocks actually do something real. Like Nvidia, like, people use the shit out of AI. I fucking love LLMs. They help me do things that I just couldn't. I could not have wrote this simulator without the help of an LLM. My syntax is garbage and I don't know the libraries, but I do know logic and organization and architecture. So LLMs can help me cover that for my syntax, right? So people use the shit out of LLMs. NVIDIA is like a really, like, true value that is being applied into the world, and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Like, don't tell me. So I know a lot of you bros out there use Amazon too, right? Amazon's a very valuable company, whatever. Like, what is Bitcoin doing? What the fuck is it doing? JPEGs right now, it's barely doing transaction volume. Like, it's going to get harder and harder to justify getting into Bitcoin instead of just having stocks, right? Like, so anyways, it's a very long-winded way of just ranting and kind of giving a counter opinion. I don't want to be a negative Nancy too much about all this, but The diminishing returns, especially relative to risk assets, has hit. So, all right, let's go back to speaking of NVIDIA. All right, let's go back to the crypto situation here, see what's going on. Let's look at some shitcoins. Nothing's happening here. Everything's just kind of like things aren't as negative as the Z-scores would make it look. It's just that we've been kind of sideways and meandering towards the downside for a few weeks now. So the Z-scores actually show up a little bit extra more downside because they're trending back towards zero. That's what Z-scores do. That's what happens when you moving averages, right? That's the idea of moving averages. We won't talk too much about that. Anyways, who's doing best here? Sol is on the top side of everyone right now. All right, relative to their own. Damn it, we're doing Monero's currently at like the FTT levels. Fuck, that's not very good. All right, and we'll look at the total crypto market cap. We've been talking about looking at this chart instead of just Bitcoin because we're in that point of the cycle. And yes, this chart is still bullish. Okay, hopefully, what we really need actually right now, if we want to like believe the bullish case, we really want this to hold. We don't want to have to. It would be fine if things came down to here, but honestly, we need strength right now. We need this to do this, right? This is the moment that you want to see strength. Otherwise, you really start to ask yourself, how real is this bull market? Like how strong is this bull market, right? We really need to see some more topside action, somewhere in the next few weeks. It doesn't mean we have to make new all-time highs, but we need to not be flirting with this notion of looking like we're about to go down. In terms of the Bitcoin dominance, this actually looks totally fine. Like if you're looking at this chart, you're just looking at this and saying, hey, that's a flag. That's a bearish flag. So down, flag, and then you'd expect down again and then flag. In which case you would expect, hey, we're going to get that bullish. We're going to get that bullish action, and it's going to go into altcoins. And I'm perfectly fine with that, right? Like I know most of these altcoins are just shit, but hey, at least Sol does something, right? Like there's more volume of USDT happening on Sol, more economically significant volume happening on Tron and Sol than it is on Bitcoin in a lot of cases. Like a lot of that Bitcoin volume, and maybe this isn't true, but years ago they showed that the Bitcoin volume, most of it was just people trying to gain privacy by churning basically. And they showed that a lot of that volume, like up to 75% of it, wasn't even economically meaningful. So yeah, I know Sol's centralized, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, I'm just saying that like Bitcoin occupies this special place of state supported price. And it's like, no, that's not, I don't like that. That doesn't sit well with me. Like Bitcoin's just like, I would rather just see that market cap exist with some other shitcoin that's doing something that people actually can use. Even if it's fucking Tether. Like, what do you want, guys? Like, I want like money that people, like they still don't really censor Tether unless you're a bad boy. Like if you need to send Tether to someone, they don't censor you. Like that could change at any moment, of course, but anyways, I just wish it's just me being negative on Bitcoin and wanting to see Bitcoin do more. We all wanted to see Bitcoin do more. Anyways, whatever. Let's get to the macro and then we'll call it a day. Let's start with oil because oil took a little tumble. Took a little whoopsie daisy here the past week. It's still not a big deal, sitting here at 61, 63. We're still in the zone that we say, hey, everything's fine. This is still a stable zone. If it starts dropping off, that'll be concerning. I'm going to be schizophrenic here. We're going to go to the civilian unemployment rate, which went up. So this thing just went it ticked from 4.1 to 4.3. And this is, remember we said the SOM rule has been activated. Like once the SOM rule has been activated, it's a foregone conclusion that there's going to be a recession. And obviously recession means the stock market's going to crash. But you could kind of say that, like, if anything, like, oh, like once this thing happens, eventually there's going to be a recession. Well, eventually there is going to be a recession. So, it's like kind of a tautology there. But anyways, the point is that this was something that we were looking at in sort of concert with a bunch of other metrics, like the price of oil, and saying if this thing starts spiking, we start getting concerned, right? Right now, historically, 4.3 is actually quite good for the economy. Like, that has been quite good for the economy, but spiking up in the unemployment rate has historically also been highly correlated, 100% correlated to stock market crashes. And effectively, the unemployment has spiked up, and now we've sort of broken out of that range. So it's not really a reason to sell your stocks or sell your crypto yet. But if this thing continues spiking over the next, say, 2 to 3 months, that does become a problem, especially if we look at it in concert with the other things, like oil, right? So if oil is crashing again and we're getting into that danger zone, and we see unemployment continuing to spike up, we're going to have to look at opportunities for exiting, right? That's what we'll end up doing. And obviously, if we see Dixie make some new, so here's the dollar index. If we see dollar index making big moves towards the upside simultaneously with those other things, that adds strength to the thesis. And right now, that's not even a thesis. It's not even a hypothesis. It's just us saying what are the things that we would want to look at in the future, and putting the criteria ahead of time instead of making shit up in real time. So yeah, another thing that we would see in this picture is dollar index having big movements towards the upside, along with reverse repos, which are now basically at zero, 21 billion, which is nothing compared to the trillion that they were at. We would see reverse repos spiking sustainably. We get these weird spikes from time to time, but this thing has never, there was a couple moments where it looked like it might be ready to start a new uptrend, and then it failed. So at the moment, reverse repos aren't showing us anything interesting. No surprise there. Gold doing well. We said, hey, if this thing breaks out, and even closes a couple days above the level, then expect it to continue breaking out, and that's basically what's happened. We are now at 35.85, and this is kind of a good reason why I said, hey, I'm not selling my gold, even though we hit like this level was my fucking spot. I was like, once we hit that, like that's where I started thinking about selling, but I just couldn't think of anything else that I wanted to go into, right? So I'm just gonna keep holding gold. It's possible, again, usually this purple line ends up being a limiter, right? That's usually like depending on the context, but in this context, you would have called this a limiter. But because of the situation that we're in, where stocks are going up and everything's going up, and they've turned on the money printer again, and the macro crash was avoided, but the inflation is still like higher than what they pretend, right? We could just see ourselves, on the top side of this line for a period of time. So that's fine. Gold will crash if we get a macro crash. If that happens, right, gold will crash with it. So let's see here. There was one thing else. Oh, the rates. We need to talk about rates. So the Federal Reserve actually said that they are going to start lowering interest rates. I don't know why the white line. So the white line is the federal funds rate. I don't know why it lags. There's two versions of them. I have the version that lags. I don't know why. Anyways, but what you can see here is that bonds have already started curling down. This is very likely the beginning of the bonds doing this action. So we are actually, so for a while we said, hey, we had the macro crash, we had the scare, we had the 20% drop off in the stock market back in April, the tariffs, etc. And then we're like, no, but it's all gone now, right? Like that's not a concern. Now the direction is up. Forget about the macro crash, right? Well, we're gonna put that macro crash not on the table precisely, but we're gonna at least allow it to enter the room with us, right? The macro crash can now start hanging out with us again, because this does look like the potential for the beginning of bonds falling off. We have Jay Powell saying that they're going to lower rates, and even though that sounds good for the markets and good for the economy, and that's a big reason why gold pumped this past week, is because Jay Powell said they're going to lower rates. So everyone's like, more inflation, that means gold goes up, right? But this is historically correlated. When they start dropping rates, this is historically correlated with them kind of like knowing that, hey, we're almost out of room, we're almost out of juice on this cycle, and so they're going to have to take us through another washout, and then another intervention, and then another cycle up. And that makes sense because the AI thing, the pattern that they do for new industries, and this is important, you'll need to listen to this. The pattern that they've done for decades now, a new industry comes that's revolutionary, it's important, it's doing cool stuff. It's losing money. Almost everyone is losing money in that industry, but the money is awash. The funds are flowing. The liquidity is easy. The banks are loaning. And then what happens? The macro crash comes to destroy, to wipe out the low players, right? To wipe out, and in a lot of ways, it's kind of a good thing. Wipe out the nonsense, wipe out the pets.com, etc. So then you wipe everything out. And then your chosen darlings are the ones that get the loans from the banks to cover themselves through the crisis. And then they come back stronger and consolidated, and you end up in an oligopoly situation. And that's exactly what is going to happen with AI at some point. They're letting 1 million flowers bloom right now, guys, and then there will only be a couple flowers left by the end of it. So you can bet your ass that they are, and this is, again, it's a way to control the market. It's a way to capture the market. And these big corporations, like OpenAI, right? These guys they'll be extremely happy about this. Obviously Google, and then Claude now is a new player, but they want to wipe out all these other little guys. And I'm telling you right now, everyone that I know in the AI industry that actually works there says that it is extremely unprofitable. Like they are not charging us enough, considering the forests that they're burning down to provide the electricity for these GPUs. So yeah, just know that wipeout is coming, which I say that because, again, we're sort of correlating, right? We're correlating things. We're not just looking at, stupid lines on a chart. We're not just, we're not just looking at one thing. We're saying, hey, this AI craze has now gone on for about 4 years, 3 to 4 years now. And at some point there needs to be a washout. It's going to happen. And right now you can already see the seedlings of that are beginning to happen. The Federal Reserve is going to lower these rates at some point, right? We're going to see some of this going on, and maybe they'll be able to extend it. Maybe they'll extend it a little bit further, right? More than we've seen before. But at some point, the shit's going to curl down, and we're going to have that next crash that we've been talking about. So that's not now. Don't worry. Don't sell your shit. You need to be long right now. Long is the important thing to be here. Even if the next move for crypto is down, and it might well be, there could be another down movement here before things go up. Maybe not, right? It could go up. I don't have any opinions on exactly what happens here with the Bitcoin price. I haven't stared at this chart for long enough to really give you like my intuition on what's about to happen. But it does look, if we ignore Bitcoin and we look at total, this does still look like a bullish chart. This chart has room to go down. This chart has room to go down before it goes up again. But this overall, in a longer, in the months long sense, this is a bullish chart. It's not as bullish as we want it to be. So anyways, I think that should be about it, guys. We've covered the macro. We've given you the taste of what, the next macro crash could happen, and the narrative that's going to accompany that. It's going to be the AI crash out narrative, and gold, is performing. So hope you guys still have your gold bags. I hope you're still long the market. If you're not long, then you need to try and get long, find opportunities to buy. And that's all I got for you guys today.
How about my silver?
Oh shit, my silver. Actually, my silver is at like 40. Let's go to, I don't think I have it pulled up, but DOT. Come on, TradingView. Of course, it's going to make a liar out of me. Let's just go to a different chart. If you hit the DOT button, you don't have to actually go over here and click your layouts. Anyways, but it didn't work this time because it wanted to make me look foolish on air. I feel so foolish, guys. Okay. XAU, XAG. Where the fuck are you, XAG? Here we are, the bottom right. Okay, yeah, XAG has been performing. Wow, look at that. Wow, this is a very beautiful chart. Some would even call it fantastic. It's going to go to this purple band right here. There's no doubt about that at this moment. So let's go to the daily. We'll see more. That purple band will become more clear once we go to the daily. But yeah, this thing is reaching for that purple spot. No, actually, the weekly was better. Yep. So, and here's the thing: purple's already curling up. So this thing is gonna continue being bullish into that band. And let me guess, we're gonna look at the gold versus silver chart, and it's gonna be, or the, wow, damn. Oh wait, that's the monthly. Yeah. So silver has been outperforming gold on the reasonably short time frame here. Let's just call it from June. So for the summer, we've had silver shining for sterling, shining for the summer. And maybe this could go down further. Probably, like the way that the silver chart is setting up, it looks more bullish than gold does in my mind. This looks like gold is sort of like not topping out, but gold is like it could still have plenty of upside, but it's gently towards the upside, where silver is kind of making this violent movement towards the upside. So, yep, silver still needs to make that new all-time high, right? $50, the new all-time high. Very likely that not only are we going to hit these purple bands, but that will probably lead into a 50 double top. And then we'll have to see a pullback. Almost certainly that 50 level will be a resistance, a hard fucking resistance. So if you're looking for a sell point on your silver short term to pivot to something else, right? 50 is a good spot there. We'll have to look at the rest of the macro and judge on that basis. But yeah, if you've been waiting, finally, if you've been waiting for silver, you're getting some silver. And I got some silver, I'm not going to lie. Got some of those bars. But yeah, in terms of the gold versus silver ratio, this chart doesn't look like terribly bullish for silver. Bullish for silver would mean bearish on this chart, right? Because we're dividing by silver. So you want lower numbers for the denominator to be bigger. Go study math if you haven't. I think everybody knows how to divide. All right. Anyways, anything else you wanted to see, bro, with silver?
No. We might be good here. Let me look at the comments. Not much today. Pretty quiet day in the comment section.
Nothing happened with price, so It's not too surprising. Like everything is basically just moved sideways, just
Boring
slightly up.
week.
Yeah. You want the kind of boring weeks that see you making slightly higher highs, not hoping that you'll recover a higher high, which is what the stock market is doing, but not crypto.
I need those bags. They're not quite heavy enough. They got some ways to go. I mean, they can get a little bit bigger. Not quite done yet. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
You need bigger, lighter bags with better buoyancy.
Sure.
Why not? Yeah. Stupid. Okay, I will see you guys later.